Yeah, we're busy with the trucks. So you that.
Yep.
See?
Oh, we were the trucks.
Yeah, when we can get Thank you. Good morning, all, and welcome to this Environment Implementation Committee for the 8th of February 2024. Oh, that sounds so old. I'll do a karakia first. Tuia ki ronga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki waho, tuia ki roto, tuia ki te here tangata, ko rongo te po, ka rongo te ao, homie hui paki e. Good morning, all. First up, we do apologies. I think we've got Alexa still unwell. And thank you for the reminder down there, Tim. No, thank you. We've got a couple of lateness, I think, from some, but we'll just carry on with an apology. I think from Alexa. I think that carries through from yesterday. We haven't heard from her today. I'll move that apology from Alexa. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Noon. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Items today. There's no public forum. Confirmation of the agenda. Nothing else that anyone wants to bring up. Great. So declarations of interest. I remind members of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises between their role as an elected representative and any private or other external interests they may have. And we note that the Council Register of Interests is published on the RIC website. Confirmation of minutes, we've got two today, and I'm happy to take them together or separately, depending on who wishes to move. There's the amended ones of the 9th of August 2023 and the 8th of November 2023. Does anyone have any comments or any discussion points? Is that a hand up, Councillor?
Yeah. I'm happy to move both, but I just had one query on page 9 of a recommendation that we sent to council as to how that is being tracked as an action, because there's no actions in this.
So which one is it? The 9th of August or the 8th of November?
Sorry, on page 9.
Sorry, page 9. Oh, sorry, I thought you said
Yeah.
item 9. Apologies.
Which is 3 at the bottom of the page. I just wonder where that's being tracked.
Yes, so there is an action in there, and it suggests that that's got to the 1st of May to do, and I'm just wondering, maybe the chairperson could tell us if she's written that letter.
Sorry.
So this is the letter to the about recommends that the council endorse option 1, ORC directly engaging with central government for an increase in funding required for the Otago region as part of the National Wild and Conifer Control Program. And I think you've got a comment. You may be having some discussions with ministers about that now.
Yeah, I can't remember if we wrote in the letter at the time.
I think there's an action in there.
There's been some discussions with early discussions with Environment Canterbury and Environment South about engaging with the new government on opportunities for wild and conifer funding. So those conversations are obviously early, given that the ministers are getting out and about and meeting council. So I'll just have to review whether we so that's ongoing. But in terms of formal letters, council, I'll need to go back and check. But certainly the discussions about opportunity funding have started this early this year.
And thank you. I think I'm thinking of the subsequent meeting, and there isn't an action here, Councillor Malcolm. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. But yeah,
Good point.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll note that for next time. You've moved and seconded. Thank you, Councillor Kelleher. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. That takes us to the matters for consideration today. There is only one. It's a substantial number of papers, but it's not that complex. Thank you, Dr. Palmer, Libby, and welcome, Sophie. And online, we've got Sarah. Now, today's paper is a site-led program update. We've got obviously mandated under the Biosecurity Act to ensure that pesky things are dealt with. And this report relates to the terrestrial pest management program and those allotted in our regional pest management plan as site-led. There is a budget in there in our 2023-24 plan, annual plan of $150,000. And this is a discussion on how we allocate that money. That's right. What else would you like to tell us about it?
Firstly, I'd just like to introduce Sophie Gibson Pinn. This is her first council meeting, so I don't know if all of you have met her before. And Sarah.
Microphone, sorry, we're on a new system, it's all.
And Sarah's online as well. So they've done most of the work on this paper, they've done a great job. So the purpose of the paper is an update on the terrestrial site-led pest programs as detailed in the Regional Pest Management Plan. And so that includes West Harbour, Mount Cargill, Otago Peninsula and Goat and Quarantine Islands. And these are areas which have rules and objectives in our Regional Pest Management Plan, and they're place-based programs which have specific environmental values that ORC have committed to supporting through the Regional Pest Management Plan, and will continue to support enhancement of those areas. So that's the purpose of this paper, and why we're just bringing these 3 areas to the committee today.
Any questions? Councillor Sunbull.
Thank
For
you.
doing your mic so quickly.
Let's remember that one. Yeah, look, it would be helpful for my understanding if I could just have a little background of why these particular areas were included in the pest management plan when many others were not. Some background around that would be helpful.
So these places are included in the Regional Pest Management Plan because they were identified at the time of development of the plan, which Sarah and Sophie were involved in. I don't know if you were involved in.
Yes, so they're pretty much pre-existing places and programs, which link themselves to site-led approaches at the time. At the time, there was my recollection, no comprehensive Otago-wide review of where those site-led programs should be. It was pretty much picking up what was in place at the time.
Thank you. No, that just gives that background. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Moon and Councillor Robinson were both on that hearings panel, and they might have some comments about that since they were involved, but thank you, Councillor Moon.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Madam Chair. The terrestrial you mentioned, it relates the 3 sites, terrestrial related projects. Was that a definition that flowed through from the regional pest management plan, or was that been a staff decision at this point in time? And why I asked the question is, I'm thinking about the 4th item identified, the Lake Recife site-led potential project. So that's why I've asked the question.
Yeah, so we do have a 4th project, which is or program, which is Lake Recife. And so this paper is not focused on that because our working group is based around the Dunedin area. So that's a different issue, a freshwater issue. And so we have lumped them together as 3 terrestrial areas, and that Lake Recife is not included in this paper, but if we could bring an update on that program at a later date that is desired.
Thank you, Libby. Can I just follow up with a question?
Yes.
I was just wondering about the pool of funds and just thinking about fairness and the ability to, I suppose, deliver on, a plan that was adopted in 2019. And, I was just trying to understand the robustness of how we've got where we've got, particularly in reference, I suppose, to the finance, the 140 odd 6K or whatever it is. And should we be considering that there is a portion of that remains available for Lake Recife? And that was really my point.
So in answer to that, we have other funding within our biosecurity budget that we use that goes towards achieving the Lake Recife outcomes. So things like check, clean, dry. So we can bring another paper back with an update on where we're at with that. And last year we invested quite a lot of budget into the Lake Recife program and not as much into the terrestrial program. So we can provide an update on where that's at if that's useful.
Well, I think that would, through the chair, I think that maybe that's a part of the resolution when we finally settle on what we're going to move today. That we request that, because I think it shouldn't be, I suppose from an elected member's perspective, it shouldn't be forgotten about.
Thank you. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. Just, I think I might have asked this question before, but it was just, we've got other projects going on that are similar in the city, the Halo project, Piers Street and Eden as well. So how are you working in with them in the site-led projects?
They're included.
That's the first question.
They're included in those ones.
Thank you. So we are working with those groups in other capacities as well. This site-led program is more looking at the overall areas holistically and not targeted at one organisation working on a particular species. We're more looking at a whole of site approach for our list of pest plant and pest animals outlined in our regional pest management plan. Our aim is to focus kind of equitably over these different species. So rather than targeting one species, the aim is to go to these sites as a whole and have that holistic whole of site management approach. Does that?
Yeah. So in terms of spending the money, the 150K basically, how do you do that? What is your budget like? Can you sort of, how do you spend it through your contract?
I can answer that. So we haven't contracted anyone yet. What we're seeking from committee is to recommend to council that the almost $150,000 is given to the community so that they can then spend it to achieve the outcomes of the regional pest management plan. So we're not looking to contract anyone.
So can you elaborate a little bit more, community being who exactly?
Well, within this paper, there's 42 community groups that are listed within or are active within the site-led areas. So we have proposed that a contestable fund be set up. And so what we're looking for is endorsement of a contestable fund to have those 42 groups provide us with information around what work they are doing, and then we can look to see which of the projects align the best with our objectives so that we can then support those groups to achieve the objectives of the regional pest management plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, councillor. Call.
Thank you, microphone. This is your first rodeo. Is it working?
Yes.
Cool. My question is, I just want to really wind the clock back, because it just seems to me this is the funding's got a very narrow focus. So my question is, can you just explain the background of where this funding came from? So like, was it part of a long-term plan 3 years ago? Was it done via that specifically for the said purpose, or is it part of a wider budget that's being co-assigned? I'd just like to know where the budget, where this money arrived from, basically.
So it did come through the long-term plan 3 years ago. To achieve the outcomes of the regional pest management plan, we need to be resourced to achieve that. And so budget was set aside within the long-term plan for delivery of site-led programs. And then for each annual plan, it has been approved as a budget within over the last 3 years to deliver on site-led programs.
Yes. Can I have a couple of follow-ups?
Yeah. I think the other part of the question was, where does the money come from?
Yeah, well, it's going to end up there, but so the actual funding line is very specifically for site-led projects.
Yes.
So that are linked into the regional pest management plan. Yeah. And can I tell you I'll ask the question where the funding comes from?
From biosecurity.
Well, it comes from, yeah, but where is actual, does it go back to who's paying for it? That's what the question is.
That might be a question for Nick specifically around how is it?
Regionally targeted rate.
Is it, yeah, why is it, I assume it's rating, the funding's rating based. Is it like a generally funded across all of the target, or is it targeted, or is it?
I can't answer that question right at the moment. It's rated. It's a rating. Yeah.
My understanding is it'd be through the biosecurity rate, which is land-based targeted rate.
Regionally, yes.
Regionally.
It's a regional rate. So basically it's funded by all ratepayers.
Yes.
Correct.
So, and it's just a comment is that it is funded by all ratepayers, but it seems to be
It's a-
very
a
narrow.
question. The discussions afterwards. Ask a question, please. Thank you.
I'll pass it now, thank you.
Councillor Robertson, sorry, I've got Councillor Somerville and then Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. One of the difficulties I think with sort of annual funding is continuity of work. What happens next? If this funding's granted to these groups, what would be the opportunities, the sort of range of opportunities for further funding from those groups? I guess I'm thinking in particular from ORC in future years. That's a fairly broad question, I know.
So within the long-term plan workshops that we've had and discussions that we've had, there is budget included within that for site-led programs. And there will be some funding conversations that occur shortly as well through the long-term plan consultation. So that's probably where it would get picked up again. Around how we continue to fund groups, that's a good question, and obviously we want to see these projects that we support endure long-term. So I guess what we're looking at for this financial year is to see how successful that is and take learnings from that and ensure that we're getting really good outcomes and achieving the objectives of the plan. Because there could be another way that we support objectives of our plan that is not direct or not funding community groups, I guess. So we need to look at what those outcomes are that are achieved and ensure that it is the most appropriate way to be achieving them. And provide that feedback to all of you to help us make those decisions around what's the best way to achieve those.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Robinson.
I think I know the answer to this, but anyway, the opportunity for these groups to seek funding other than this particular pool as well. Do we fund groups other ways as well?
Yes, we do. So through the Eco Fund and through some of our incentive funding that we provide as an organisation.
Yeah. It's pretty much the answer. Some of these groups are receiving other money as well. Yeah.
Councillor Elliott.
Kia ora. It's awesome to see these sites have so much interest from all these different community groups. You know, got everything from Orokonui to the Yellow Penguin Trust and all these other groups. I was just wondering if the because obviously it's contestable. So it's
No, we haven't made that decision yet.
right.
If you adopt that.
Adopts the recommendations, it will be contestable. I was just wondering if that would be limited to the named groups or whether that would be open to any other theoretical groups that might be willing to bid.
Good question. If it's contestable, it will be open to any group that's working within that area.
Or depending on, it does depend on decisions today. Okay, I don't think there are any other questions. Can I just ask sorry. Can I?
You go first.
Sorry, just following up from Councillor McCall's question. So we've got a site-led project areas. The expectation in the annual plan is that we, under the biosecurity, we make sure there's funding for those that work. Is there an expectation from these groups and an understanding that there is a pot of money and has been a pot of money all year waiting to be allocated and an expectation on their part for that?
Thank you. So we have been in collaboration with these groups and discussions with these groups. There has not been any direct, we have not said that we have a pot of money available. So we've been talking a lot about support and facilitating their work, but not specifically as to how ORC was going to do that. Just because there wasn't, we just wanted to make sure that we can still support them in any way we can, whether or not the funding is made available through a direct or contestable fund prior to this meeting.
Okay, and the only other part of that is just, sorry, I can't remember the detail now. Your suggestion, I think, is if it were contestable, or even if it's not contestable, that it's this money or it's Eco Fund. It's not both, is that correct? Have you made that recommendation?
Correct. So our proposal was that if it is a contestable fund, that we would be working closely with the Eco Fund team and that the groups would receive either or. So they would never receive both site-led and Eco Fund funding.
And just for clarity, I'm going to ask Sarah a question because she has answered this directly and I have shared the details, but I think it's important that the community understand this question. Is the process by which any group in Otago could become a site-led project under the RPMP, whether that requires complete review or whether that's a different process? And Sarah, if you could highlight that for us, please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that is correct. There is the provision within the Regional Pest Management Plan for us to consider adding new site-led programs. Whether that triggers a full review of the plan or whether that can just be done as a minor amendment is based, what's outlined in the Biosecurity Act and based on whether it has particular implication for people. So if there's rules involved, generally that would probably trigger a full plan review. The criteria for this is outlined within the biosecurity strategy, but it is fairly broad criteria at this point.
And can I just add to that, at the moment we aren't resourced to support any further site-led programs because we're resourced to deliver on our regional pest management plan as it is right now. So if more programs or projects were added into a site-led program, we would need to figure out how we resource that and support them.
Yeah, totally appreciate that. Councillor McCall, sorry, Councillor Malcolm, you had another question, I think.
Yeah, I am just really struggling to form a question, but I will around it in that while this is an Otago, a regional rate, we have really defined it to a working group that is completely Dunedin centric, and with the possibility of other site-led projects becoming known throughout Otago. Where is the representation from the rest of Otago to ensure that they get a fair hearing? Because at the moment we've got no one. Well, yeah, we've got no one representing the community. We've got no one representing governance on the working group, and the whole working group's Dunedin centric. So where do we get that information from elsewhere?
To be fair, and I'm going to answer that question in the first instance. At the moment, the only site-led ones are Dunedin centric, except for the Lagrosiphon. So that the staff are just doing, because we haven't reviewed, and it's council decision to review the site-led and the budgeting for that and what those areas are, then so the staff are just complying with the RPMP as it is. I think that's a fair way of putting it.
I don't agree with that answer because this is an Otago-wide, it's your interpretation, and I'm asking staff for the answer on that because this is an Otago-based rate, and there is the Lagrosiphon one, but this, why are we collecting a rate from Otago-wide and we're not being represented for the whole of Otago? That's the part that irks me with this.
Sorry, as the representation body, I'm with you, sorry.
I can answer that. So in 2018, the Regional Pest Management Plan was developed and consulted with across Otago, and these sites were specifically included in the plan at that point. And Councillor Wilson is correct. We are delivering on what the Regional Pest Management Plan advisors, which are those 3 sites within, and they are located within Dunedin, but this is a regional pest management plan that we are delivering.
Okay. Councillor Robson.
Sorry, people are rated for the implementation of the whole pest plan, just for clarity of people that might be listening. So some people might be paying for education for rabbit control in peri-urban areas, for example, but they might not be in Dunedin, and it's the implementation of a regional plan.
Thank you for that. I'm sure that was a question.
Was.
Is that correct? Sorry, that sounds like
Is that correct?
Brian. Is that a Brian question?
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to take this in 2 parts. I think from what I'm understanding, there may be some discussion about whether we put groups through a competitive bid process, or look at a different allocation first. I think structurally it's possibly time for us to have a review of the site lead, but I don't think we can do anything about that today. And I'm slightly concerned in the future that when this money is available in a plan, that we try and get it out as quickly as possible in the financial year rather than at the end, because the competitive system suggested an option 2. The money was going out at the end of the financial year, which I think is problematic, the best and efficient use of our rates. But that's a structure problem. We can deal with that in the long-term plan future. So the first question is, I think, whether people want to see a contestable fund or a different system. So, sorry, Kevin. Sorry, Tim. Councillor Mifflin.
Just before we finish the questions, what does the successful outcome of this look like? I mean, 150,000 doesn't seem to be a lot of money. What are we actually aiming to achieve?
So we have objectives within our regional peace management plan to enhance the environmental outcomes within those specific areas. So what we're looking to do is support our community, who we know are already doing an amazing job, by giving them funding to assist us in achieving those outcomes for those special areas that are defined within the plan.
But section 6.5 of the regional peace management plan defines the areas of values about that place that have to be protected and improved, and that's what they're dealing with the site lead ones.
So just for me, because I'm a bit slow, what would it look like? What does in a particular area a successful outcome? What does it actually look like?
To us, successful outcome would be that the community is collaborating and working towards maintaining the values of these particular sites. We wouldn't expect all of these pest plants and pest animals to be gone with a allocation of funding, whether it's through a direct or contestable fund, but it's always we want the communities to be working together towards common goals. These community groups are focused on their own kind of goals, so it's about bringing them together and trying to form some collaboration to work towards common goals.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Malcolm, did you? I'm not trying to direct what the solution is here. I want, if you've got questions, if we focus on that first run, I think we're going down that line. That'd be great. But I'm open to any questions.
I'll review finished questions. I was just going to want to move something in the direction of option 3.
Option 3, and can you?
I wanted to change the wording of option 3.
That's fine, and that's why I really want to focus on whether there are some questions about option 2 or 3 about how that pans out and whether it's the eco fund or something else doing that money. So we still need an assessment panel. Is what I mean. So yeah.
Well, that's your opinion.
No, sorry. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is I'm going to be really loose about when we have questions, because I think whichever way we go, we may still have some questions, if that's okay. So Councillor Malcolm, feel free to.
Right. So option 3, I simply wanted to take away the wording working group and replace it with Eco Fund panel.
So it's not in the recommendation. So can I just make sure that we all know what you're moving? You're moving notes of report. So A.
Yep.
Recommends to council to approve the allocation of 100 from the existing budget to be delivered through option 3, which is the Eco Fund allocation.
Yep.
Okay.
No, the Eco Fund the Eco Fund panel will be.
The assessment panel.
That's
So,
it. Well,
yeah.
So Kevin, if I understand, you're approving option 3, which is allocation through a direct process using the Eco Fund panel.
correct. Yes.
Thank you. The wording. I just want to get the wording right.
Yeah. But I also want to change that value to 150,000. So that was the figure that we agreed on $150,000, and I'm unsure why that the 3,800. I understand why, but I'm just wondering why the $3,800 that we used for a part of the investigation process should it not actually have come out of the environmental budget as opposed to the budget set aside to delivery. And I'm flexible on that, but I just wanted to, yeah.
So we have had $150,000 to deliver site lead programs under the RPMP, and so we've already spent $3,800 of that on
The community.
the community hui where that was held at Otako Marae, and bringing all those groups together.
Right,
So that investment's already been made in delivering part of our site lead program.
right, yeah, I'll let you know that. Yeah, no, yeah, and that's what I thought. Well, really, I thought that's really just part of our operational budget as opposed to, but I can see how you've got that. All right, I'll leave it at 146,200.
Okay, thank you. And have we got a second just to finish this part? And then I'm going to be really fluid about questions. Do we have a seconder for that option?
Can I ask,
Yeah,
can I ask a question?
I had a question rather than a question following up from Kevin's proposal before I make a decision, perhaps.
Do you need to second?
I need a seconder to pro forma at least, or not? Do you want to set pro forma it?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Seconded pro forma just to give us something to work on. And I'm just going to test this, that I think the recommendation was that it goes for allocation, but it's a recommendation to council from the Eco Fund. Yeah, thank you. Just checking that was
Standard Eco Fund process with that set budget, that set
Without
budget of
applications.
150 is the year for Eco Fund to shout to those site-led projects.
but not as an application. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay,
No, not contested.
question from you and then I'll go around. Yeah,
Thank you. The question is, and I guess it's around if we're going this direct funding method, which I do favour, about who's making that decision. And Kevin, Councillor Malcolm's proposal is the Eco Fund panel. So my question is, could you just clarify who, if we went with the what's in the paper about the site-led working group, who exactly is that site-led working group? And I think it's probably buried in those papers somewhere.
So firstly, the working group and the Eco Fund panel would not make the decision. The council would make the decision on how the funding was allocated. So we have developed a operational working group, which includes staff from the environmental implementation team and two mana whenua representatives, one from Otako and one from Puketawaki. And so we are working with them to in an operational capacity, and they help to provide advice and input into what mana whenua values are and how those align with ORC values and what we're trying to achieve in the regional pest management plan. So the working group does not have decision-making powers. They provide input and recommendations to the environmental implementation team and to you all today through this paper, because they've had input into the development of where we are. And it's been really useful, and we really appreciate the support we get from our partners on this working group.
And I guess if the decision was made that the recommendation should come from the Eco Fund panel, that working group could still inform that Eco Fund panel in their decisions.
I guess so. That would be something that you would need to clarify for us.
I'm
That you
just
would like
thinking
to happen.
that working group, they are the ones who are currently most well informed about this and would
Absolutely.
want to make use of their knowledge. Thanks. Okay.
you're still happy with your pro forma?
Pro forma.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. I've got, I think I had Councillor McCall that I didn't ask, I put the hands to our apologies.
Well, it would have been good to be prior to the motion, but I'm just going back to the site-led working group. I think it's on page 26 of your agenda. And it's here based on 2 representatives from each Rūnaka and 4 representatives from Libby's team.
Can I just check the term? So what is your question? That's just,
No, just.
okay. Could I just ask a question on that? My understanding of working group was a council allocated thing, and a technical advisory group may have been a council operational committee. This seems to be an advisory group set up by operationally, not a working group, which is normally I thought set up by council. Is that correct? We haven't set this up as council?
No, we've set this up as staff, but if we've got the wrong name, we can change that.
I'm just wondering whether.
I'm not sure what the name
that's
should be.
Yeah, that may be where I think we possibly say, yeah, I'm not quite sure. That's how I had thought the process was. So thank you, Councillor McCall, for your statement.
Sorry, Madam Chair, could I ask my previous question, which is not related to the motion?
Okay, so yes, sorry.
Well, so my question was, it's basically around option A. If we were to decide to keep the funds for the future, how would those funds be treated if they were to be carried over into next year's annual plan, next year's funding? Will they simply directly tag the site-led groups, or will they become just part of the carried over reserves for the biosecurity as a whole?
As I understand it, and I'm not in charge of finance, so I can't comment fully, but I believe they would be just a savings.
And the biosecurity budget and going
Yes.
to the reserves. I mean, that's a decision for us, so it's not a decision for staff. We can do carryovers any which way we like.
So we go into the overall biosecurity fund but not remain completely tagged to the regional pest management plan as it today.
It would be, yeah, it would have to be tagged to biosecurity reserves. The question is how open, and we've actually had two questions that don't quite align about the purpose for this money being rated, because I actually can't find it in the annual plan as clearly as it's site-led.
No,
No, so it is just biosecurity reserve. Yeah.
I think just to follow up on that, my biggest concern is that there's significant draw on community groups across all of Otago for community-based activities for the environment. And with the changes with Jobs for Nature, et cetera, there's massive funding deficits across most community groups right now. And to have a reasonably significant fund being narrowed down to a very small group just doesn't seem to be, to me, it seems like it doesn't seem to be completely equitable under today's climate. It was probably an awesome idea when it was set in place 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. But under today's climate, I just wonder whether that fund may be better, more widely distributed, one way or the other, so that we can support groups across all of Otago to be able to get over the funding gap that they're all currently experiencing. So that's why that question was led to, as to whether it would still be tied to a specific narrow focus or whether it would go into a wider focus if it was carried over into the future. Because I think the idea of this is, it's like at the end of the day, that's like an end of year funding decision for this year's work sort of thing. So it's nearly close to retrospective anyway. So it's for us to, like, as I understand, the fund's set up to support communities for their work in the current year as opposed to the future year.
yeah, I can comment on that. So staff have worked really hard to get to this point, and we couldn't just have a fund available without doing the work that's gone behind that. So I guess that's the first point. We also, if we were to reabsorb that funding into a wider biosecurity pot and allocate it, however as seen fit, we would not be meeting the objectives of our regional pest management plan under the site-led objectives. So that is something that you would need to decide and support. If you don't want us to meet that, then we can do so.
Okay, thank you.
I certainly appreciate the work that's done. It's an awesome report. It's been very, very well written. It's just, I'm just, just getting it through into my head, the other options more wider.
Sorry, we've got a motion, but I was leaving there just to finish the questions because of that changing, I just think that it's only fair to give people a chance to ask questions. So I just don't want to get quite into debate because I haven't asked the first speaker to speak yet. So if we can just keep this to questions, it'd be great. Sorry, yep. Gary, and then
Gary, sorry.
Gary,
yeah,
yeah.
Your life.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, Gary, you're onto it.
Oh, yeah, these things are awesome.
You light up our lives, Gary.
Waiting. To the motion mover and seconder, is the intent that the
alignment with the Eco Fund. Does that then mean that this is in a program advertised and moved forward as the Eco Fund would be proposed, because that is all, it's based around similar timelines? Or is your proposal that the panel of the Eco Fund will, behind closed doors, also assess this proposal because it's much more ring fenced? Is there some muddying that is likely to be created because it is aligned with the Eco Fund? That's my question.
The panel is the same, that is all, I think, in the motion.
That wasn't clear.
Yeah,
Say again.
no, from the paper, I think it is. The panel is the same. The panel is the Eco Fund panel, but the process is different. Is how I had understood option 3 outlined, but.
Is that the intent of the mover and the seconder?
Yeah. Can I talk to that? Well, the intent is that the 146,200 be allocated to site-led programs based on the prioritisation outlined on Appendix 5, the values, threats and impacts assessment. So all that work's already been done. So I'm simply saying the 146,000, that will get, that process will be evaluated by the Eco Fund panel, and they will distribute the 146,200 proportionally to how they assess those values.
Okay, seconder, you understood it that way?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And just noting, I seconded that pro forma, which I understand means in order to enable the debate to go ahead, not because I necessarily favour that.
And appreciated that. Thank you. Councillor Robertson, still trying to do questions, and then I'm going to get into debate. Sorry. Yes.
Oh, Brian had his.
Oh, sorry. But
first question is, over what period does the work need to be done in? Does it have to be done this financial year? And second of all, it seems like we've got a lot happening in this area from the Hui, heaps of awesome progress. What could be achieved through this? Yeah, what would we notice in here that's really important that we do in this area?
Thank you. Firstly, for this funding, a lot we would want to try and stick to the financial years. So we would be asking for groups to be able to complete their project within a 12-month period from receiving the funding. And we've predominantly done that to align with Eco Fund and how that process runs, because it is a very robust process. For the other parts of the question, we are already seeing some outcomes from hosting the Hui at Otago Marae, and one of those outcomes has been through collaboration of these different groups. So that was a really beneficial starting point for this process for the site-led program, is getting everyone into the same room, talking about how do they control this pest plant and getting that discussion going. Through the values, threats and impacts assessment, we were able to highlight priority areas with high biodiversity values. We do acknowledge that the whole of the site-led area with our limited funds is a lot to kind of work on. So we are limited with our funding. So we asked the question as to where can we focus going forward? And our report gave us 12 kind of priority areas. The working group has been going through a process of trying to further, I guess, prioritise these areas, because 12 areas is still a lot to focus on with our limited funding. And so from there, we would focus on specific areas, collaborate with the communities and try and get some holistic management in those areas. So outcomes, we are outcome driven. We need to see that this money is making a difference. So depending on the outcomes of this meeting today, it could be focusing on fewer areas with a holistic approach. It could be giving direct funding to all of the community groups. It is your decision at the end of the day.
Councillor Scott and then Councillor Methven.
Cool. I like aspects of Kevin's proposal
consider any applications via the Eco Fund, but I've got three quick questions. The first one is my understanding is that the Eco Fund is a contestable fund, whereas this proposal is for direct funding. So how would that work in relation to this proposal?
Our recommendation is that it is a contestable fund for specific groups to apply for. It's, our recommendation is not that it is a direct fund.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just pointed out to the mover and the seconder that anomaly there.
Maybe I could just add to that what I'm hearing is it's two discrete funds, two separate kind of things, but it's using the same panel to do those two kind of things. That's what I heard with the recommendation.
Okay. So you're comfortable then that one is direct and one's contestable, it's just the same panel?
Yes, that's my understanding. It's extending the role of the panel to do two things. One is Eco Fund, as it currently does, and then a new, quite different role, which is this direct.
Slightly.
Okay, cool. Thank you. The second one is, though, why can't we keep it as contestable, this particular fund, and maybe simplify the application process? Because, like, it seems to me that the beauty of the contestable is that
that's a matter of debate. It's not a question for staff. The recommendation, the several options put up.
Okay, so
And so the option that's been put, yeah, sorry.
So the answer to the question was, it could be kept contestable, and some of the issues that make us suggest direct funding could actually be addressed by simplifying the application.
Yes.
Thank you. And the third question is a working group, like if we get down the track of this Eco Fund is moved, is a working group really needed, or an advisory group, or whatever it's called? Is it really needed? And you commented before about the Mount Whenua aspects.
Sorry,
sorry. Question.
The staff have used the advisory group to get where we are now, and
Yeah, I was just asking them the question.
Yeah, but that's not a question on the motion. The question is about, I've asked, and I said I'm going to be really fluid on this because we're doing something that isn't part of the motion. But you had a chance to ask that question earlier. That was one that was related to the previous. That's not specific to this actual motion that's being put. And I just want to try and keep it.
Yes, it is. It's fundamental to it. It's fundamental because what's being moved is that I want to have clarity that the working group is actually required. If I'm going to go down the track of supporting the Eco Fund panel, or because can I go with my question, Madam Chair, or do I have to have a debate with you?
You don't have to have a debate with me. I'm just saying the working group has been going for some time and has helped with the creation of this. So what its role is under the new option isn't necessarily one for the questions for the staff to answer. You may want to ask the members of that group themselves, but I'm not quite sure that it's a fair question of the staff.
Well, my question is, will it cease to exist with the Eco Fund panel?
Hopefully not. They've been really useful in helping us
My
understand
question
the community, and we really appreciate the partnership we have with Mount Whenua in this space.
Cool. That gives me some clarity. Thank you.
Councillor Metham, please, it's a question on the motion.
Well, this question is going to help me inform me as to whether I support the motion or not. We've got 4 options there, and we've jumped into option 3 immediately, but we've got option 2, which is a recommended motion from staff. And it looks to me as if that is what you're preferring. Why? I mean, I want to support staff in this. Can you clarify why option 2 is your favourite option out of all of these, please?
Absolutely. So it is our recommended and favoured option because it is fair and transparent for community groups to put forward any project that they have that relates to our criteria, and we can assess them as a whole. There may be some groups potentially that we've missed through our stock take that are undertaking work that we don't know about, so giving them an opportunity to tell us about the work they're doing, or a new group's formed in the last 6 months that we don't know about. So giving those people an opportunity to put forward their projects and how they can help us meet the objectives of the plan, we think is important as part of the process. And yeah, it's fair and equitable. If someone comes and says, why didn't you give me funding? We have a process in place where we can justify why we haven't done so, whereas more with direct funding, that is harder to answer from a staff point of view.
I would just like to add that the application was put together based on a current EcoFund application. So a lot of this information asked in this application is nice to have, but it's not essential. So there definitely is opportunity for us to streamline the application process as well.
Oh.
And I'd just like to add to that, the reason for that was so that if a community group was not successful in obtaining the funding from this funding pool, then the application would be easily transferable to the Eco Fund without them having to do anything additional.
Sorry, can I ask Sarah, and said I'm going to use question, but the timeframes differed, didn't they? For that, so that wouldn't be necessary.
Correct. So the timeframes that we've put forward were to align with the Eco Fund so that the decisions would be made on the funding pool for the site-led funding ahead of Eco Fund.
Okay.
And therefore those applications that potentially were not successful could then just transfer over very quickly through to the Eco Fund application process.
Sorry, I read that and I crossed those in my head. Sorry, apologies. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'm now going to go to the mover to speak to his motion. Sorry, you've all had questions. Everyone has had a chance to ask questions. And you've actually debated it, Councillor McCall. So is it a question about this? Because we need to put the
My
motion.
question is about the motions in front of us for clarity. So I'd like, well, I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
It's a question of the mover and staff. So the idea, the motion that's in front of us is to have an non-contested fund that's distributed. I'd just like to know, based with the Eco Fund group panel. So, but I'd like to know where the information is going to come that's going to inform the panel to make the judgment of whether the panel is that going to come from the site-led working group or the staff or a combination, or how is the information going to be put in? Where's the information going to come from?
Question for staff. If they put up option 3, so if option 3 is recommended today, how did you see this process pan out? I don't think it's one for the council.
I don't know that I can comment on how the Eco Fund panel would receive the information because that's not what we put forward, but we would receive information from the working group and then bring that to council to make a decision on the direct funding. So they would provide a recommendation. Was our vision with this B option, that's like, or it's different from what's on the screen, option 3, sorry, in the paper, we would receive information from the working group panel, provide this to council or to this committee, and then a decision would be made.
So that would then do it to the Eco Fund, presumably, instead.
Yeah, the way I'd see it working is staff would go to the Eco Fund panel with some recommendations and get some support for that. There'd then be direct negotiation with those different groups. It's kind of like running a procurement process. Agree in principle around what would be funded and what would be done, and that bring it back to that Eco Fund group who would then endorse that, and then we would bring it to council for approval.
Thank you.
It's kind of a procurement process.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question, Councillor McCall. I'm sure that's going to assist everyone. Thank you. Okay, could we now, Councillor Malcolm, if you'd like to actually speak to your motion. This is now debate, no more questions.
This fund is, while it was done 3 or 4 years ago, it is set for a specific site-led program, and that is limited to the 4 projects that we've been listed. They're all excellent programs, that they're working, they're functional, they've got a lot of activity in them. They are acting on our regional pest management plan, but we need action. And we need to continue to make sure that they have got action. If we look at the Manuhira Care Exempted Catchment Group, where they were given direct money from the Ministry for the Environment, that has created action. because they knew they were getting the money and there has been action. And those who are fortunate to be at the wetlands program last week would see that that action is certainly happening with certainty, and that group can continue. We've had a working party that has done a huge amount of work on value threats and impact assessments. So all the work is basically being done, but I think it is the eco panel to show that it is a council decision as opposed to the working group decision that does that final assessment along the lines that Dr. Palmer has set for procurement. So I just think let's get the money out there. There's $150,000 that needs to be out there. We need to be killing and eradicating pests. So let's give these groups some certainty and get it going.
Thank you. Councillor Sumble, did you wish to speak now or later? Sorry.
Now would be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Look, I'm certainly favour using this money for good purposes as soon as we can. I don't favour a contestable fund. I would rather have the direct funding. And my reasoning there is that contestable funds can be a burden for community groups, and I'm aware that not all community groups are equally well equipped to put those together. Along with that, it seemed to me that the site-led working group is already well informed and is in a good position to be able to make a decision. And I guess I'm a bit concerned with also how it might get a little tangled up with the eco fund applications, though perhaps that has been dealt with. In terms of who makes the decision, I had favoured the working group doing so. However, having heard staff say how that their knowledge and advice can be given through to another group, and Councillor Malcolm's rationale for proposing the Eco Fund, I would be happy for that to support recommendation D up there too. That recommendation comes to the Eco Fund. I think that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Councillor Sumble. Councillor Ware.
I'm happy to foreshadow an alternative motion in the case that this fails. But I do first want to just say that I find it quite frustrating, and so I can't imagine how frustrating it must be for staff when we do have something that's in one of our specific plans that's been discussed by council a bunch, and then we even have our site-led stuff, and we even have a whole day hui on it and stuff like that, and then it comes to the council table again, and it's sort of, why is all this money going to just Dunedin? I do see, in terms of the motion, I see the logic of utilising the Eco Fund panel, but I think that the working group is far more equipped with on the ground knowledge of the different groups, how they function, which funds would be best to cover which areas, and how they can work together and stuff. Just that the Eco Fund just doesn't have, and that they won't really get that knowledge without contestable funding and a chance for those groups to share their case. So without the working group or contestable funding, I'd be quite nervous about supporting this motion. I think that I do share Councillor Somerville's concerns about the nature of contestable funding, particularly when it comes to sort of short-term like 1 year long projects, and I do think we need to look at how we can both support more site-led work within the pest management plan in the long term in other areas of Otago, and then also how we can support them more long term so that they don't have to keep putting resources into applying every single year and stuff. But that is sort of the process that has been set up here. It's the process that we're best resourced to do for this funding for this year. And so I think that I will be not supporting this motion and will be supporting the recommendation that staff have made previously.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Cool. Couple of points. First one regarding the Dunedin centric. Yeah, and I certainly, acknowledge that. At the end of the day, 150,000, I'm just being suggested it's a lot of money, but I don't actually see it as a lot of money. And I think in terms of the information, it will be well spent in these three particular areas. I think the challenge in terms of site lead is to actually grow it and grow the funds and to bring other site communities into it around Otago. That's what I think the challenge is, without actually upsetting the apple cart in terms of all the work that's gone into these three areas. One of the advantages of involving the Eco Fund is that they could actually balance the geography of the Dunedin and the 150 against some of the Eco Fund applications if they saw fit. Anyway, that's my comments in relation to the Dunedin centric. I believe it's the beginning. Let's support it. In relation to the motion at hand, the Eco Fund, I think there's advantages and disadvantages in terms of whether the Eco Fund panel makes the ultimate decision in the working group, and I can see the arguments with both. But my bottom line is I disagree with some of the previous speakers. I want it to be contestable. I don't actually like it when a big organisation handles funding in a direct way. And so if it's difficult for the groups, then we need to simplify our application process to make it easy for them, but always have the door open for and to encourage new groups to form without actually having to get on the right side of the ORC, to tick the ORC boxes, give them the opportunity to apply. And that's one of the fundamentals with the Eco Fund. So I won't be supporting that option. I'm leaning towards option 2. They're my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers, Councillor Noon?
Thanks, Madam Chair. A couple of comments. I'm happy to support the motion, but just a couple of clarifications. Firstly, the budget, we're talking about the 23-24 year, which we approved just under 12 months ago, 8 months ago, whatever. So this is a budget that this council approved for these activities. So just want to make that clear. The other issue around the biosecurity rate through land value and the debate about where it should be spent or whatever, I could argue about wild and conifers that Dunedin ratepayers pay for, but they'll never actually get a direct benefit. They get the wider benefit because the environment is much better off, which they can all enjoy, but they make that $2 or $3 contribution. So it's really, really hard, I think, to single out with the biosecurity rate where we start slicing up the pie to try and make a sort of an even allocation across the province. It's about priorities, and that should land on the money should land on the highest priority and work its way down. I think the motion does help to improve the situation for a lot of organisations. The direct, I like the idea of the direct funding process. Some of us around the table, I'll say all of us around the table, involved in some sort of community group, and the amount of time and effort that you've got to put into secure funding with no guarantee of getting anything, and often you apply and you get 10% of what you applied for. And so I just think an ability to be able to give certainty from a funding perspective would be a huge plus to all these volunteers that are involved in these sorts of projects. So I'm happy to support the motion.
Got it. Tim, then Rich, and then Gary.
Look, firstly, this is not a huge amount of money, and also it is linked to our planned outcomes. I'm going to support option 2. I'm not going to vote in favour of option 3, and the reason for that is this recommendation is coming from staff. I respect the experience and expertise of our staff in bringing this recommendation to us. It avoids complexity. Look, if we were talking about millions of dollars here, then debate around all the various options and moving away perhaps from the staff recommendation might be appropriate. But this is a small amount of money. But I also agree with you, Andrew, it is difficult for small organisations to actually compete for funding. But This is not a huge amount of money, and I think that I'm just going to stick with the principle of supporting staff on this fund.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say that this is an absolutely excellent example of where a site-led initiative is working. Yes, we could do a lot more. We could be more coordinated, but I think, is it 42 groups? I think it's possibly more than 42 groups if you add the pests and the weeds together, but a huge amount of community work happening in this area for really good outcomes. So, I think it's really important that we support this work. The future is tougher, and Councillor McCall asked some questions around that earlier on. Funding will be tougher from external Crown probably inputs through a range of different funding. Our council does want to support this type of initiative, particularly the larger scale ones. We're probably going to be consulting on those. That will be sort of a generation two, post the Jobs for Nature, etc. What are we going to do in that space? So that's a big reset and a rethink for Otago that's coming very soon. In the meantime, we have agreed to this funding that's for this year. The one worry that I've got is that by going into a 12-month bits and pieces sort of funding, that we will give out money to some of these groups in a bits and pieces sort of way that then hamstrings them from a coordinated strategic approach and potentially a different and bigger even way of funding into the future. So that's something to be mindful of. I think I support the option two, which is the contestable approach at this point, if I do support this, because ideally I think we need to have a reset for the way that we fund big, really successful projects in a coordinated way. So I'm almost at the leaving it in the reserve and dealing with this next year. But if we are going to do this contestable, because that's very transparent, it's the way we're set up at the moment. And if our criteria change in the future, which they might, we would set up criteria then. But I do think probably contestable at the moment.
Got it. Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I'll support the motion. I think it's well intended. EOIC has a track history of being hard to get money out of, and it takes an effort for community groups. Contestable, of course, it's transparent, it's detailed, it is incredibly hard for small groups. This is very ring fenced. The Eco Fund is available to all of Otago for all projects to be submitted and to be given fair consideration. And this is ring fenced to, yes, Dunedin centric, because that's where the work is needed to be done. So in the scale of the overall scheme of things, it's a smallish amount of money, but it's a necessary amount of money. The more streamlined we can be to get that money out to those that need it, the better in my mind and in this example. So I'll support the motion.
Any other speakers before I thank you, Councillor McCall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a wee bit torn, to be honest. I'm sort of like going pulled in three directions at the minute, but I'd have to say that I was encouraged with the Cordio around if we would go with the option 3 as up there, that basically the option is going to be informed by the site group and staff to inform the panel. I just really think we need to I appreciate all the stuff around the rating and it is the site approach there, and there's some really awesome work there, and I'm just really mindful that, after the Hui, the Hotako, it's really awesome to see how joined together that working group is, and they've got a pretty intimate understanding of all the action that's been going across all of the 12 priority sites. I am with so for me, I'm just debating with myself a little bit, but with the contestable funding, like ideally it would be go through a contestable funding process. But there's just the processes are way too clumsy, but it needs to be, completely simple, because at the end of the day, there's a whole group of people who know all these groups, and you don't have to put your birth date and what you had for lunch in your funding application. You just want a brief outline of what you're going to be using the funds for, and then you've got the group who understands you and take it from there. So, my meaning is, I think that because got such a really close working relationship with that site lead group, if we were going to go for a non-contested approach, I think it should be basically basically our staff and the site lead group work together to come up with a recommendation to go direct to council. I think bringing in the Eco Fund group just adds some more complexity, because you've got people from outside the organisation involved in that, and off the top of the head, I'm not even 100% sure, but I do know there's a couple of councillors on there, which is good. So, but so I think that's I think it's I think that's where I would have been going. I do think that it is not a large amount of funding. We want to put it to the best use, and I think the people who know best about where this funding needs to go is the site led working group and our staff, because they're integral with the system. And I don't believe we'd have to really relax the criteria if we think there's going to be another group pop out of the blue. So I don't believe that that's a reality, that they would meet the criteria to be able to even put an application in as it sits on the paper. So I think we actually know where the funding will. I think the site lead group and our staff know where the best place for the funding is to get the best bang for the dollar, and to be all inclusive with all the other groups, the smaller groups, that they can actually work together in a cohesive way, and encourage them to do that as we move into future funding opportunities where larger groups may be more easier to fund. So I'm not going to support the motion as it sits, because I think it creates more complexity, but I would support it if the Eco Fund panel was not in it. I'm sorry.
Any other speakers? I think it's only Councillor Noon that hasn't spoken.
No, it's okay.
Oh, you have spoken, sorry, because you just didn't write your name. I'll speak now. I'm going to support this. I think we're really mixing up a whole lot of very simple ideas. We have a contestable fund for when people want to do a job, which we benefit from, the whole environment benefits from, but they're doing what they want to do. This is money to deliver what is in our plan, and we need to, by statute, deliver. And on that basis, we should be making that decision of where the money goes and gets the highest values. We can be informed by what I would call an advisory group, but they weren't set up as a decision-making body, with all respect, and we haven't been informed of that process. I think we've got Eco Fund sitting alongside, seeing applications coming in, and may have some groups that come in through that they can say, actually, this would sit better over here. And that's a really fluid and easy process, and we've seen it happen where pots of money are done differently. And I think them working on this would make absolute sense that they would have that, but they're also set up by us as a council to allocate funds from us as a council, and we should have that rigour. So I'm really comfortable with the process that's been in this. I'm concerned that we actually haven't had oversight of this fund as a direct fund in the past, and that may and that it may not even have a future. We need to sort that out, and so I think the funding of the project, plus also how we fund and what are site lead projects is a different paper that we need to consider at a different time than here. And I'm fine that it's not an emotion, which I think Councillor Noon had suggested it earlier. There is not going to be any shortage of people needing this money or needing it throughout Otago. That's a debate for the long-term plan. I don't want to mix that up today. We allocated this money. The money should be used. We've rated people and taken it out of their pockets, saying we're doing something with it. And it's coming into the second part of the year, and we're potentially looking at a very long-term plan to get money out. I'd like to see this going out much sooner than potentially the Eco Fund, but because it's come out of someone's pocket already. And that's something that I have a real tension with, but I'm not going to be able to fix it with this motion, and I'm happy not to. I think it's something we have to have a much more rigor when you put money into the long-term plan, that we see it coming out as quickly as possible and doing stuff as quickly as possible. But I'm going to be supporting this because this is money that we have said is needed to be spent, and we should be making sure, unlike contestable funds, that the money is going to the best purpose. And that's why I'm going to respect the processes that were non-contestable. Okay, right of reply, councillor Malcolm.
I always look at the what the headline will be in the front page of the Otago Daily. If we have a recommendation from a working group that dishes out funding, that's good, but that particular working group has no, from its outset, has had no governance on it, has no wider community representation on it. To me, that is fraught, and that's why I want to bring in the Eco Fund, which brings in the governance and community aspect to it. To say that the Eco Fund panel, Councillor Ware says that the Eco Fund panel probably doesn't have the knowledge of these schemes to do the correct assessment. Well, that would be really like saying that the Eco Fund doesn't have the knowledge or ability to assess any Eco Fund. They simply do it on the knowledge that is presented to them. We've seen that the working group will provide them that knowledge, and the staff will also provide that knowledge. There have already been 12 priority areas that have been highlighted, so that will simply form the basis of, and apparently that those priority areas are also being refined, so that will simply, for the Eco Fund, will assist them greatly in delivering. We have got 4 months left by the time, if we get this going, this has got to go out and be done this year, so that's June 2024. So we've got 4 months. So that's why I want this process done bang now, so we can actually get this money out, because simply we've got no way of knowing if we're going, in our long-term plan, are going to have additional money, or if we're going to carry this on. Let's get this money out into the people that are doing the jobs now. Yes, it'd be lovely to be contested. In reality, the contestable part, when we go through local governments, just takes far too long and doesn't get action. So what we need is action. So I'm saying direct fund and get it out there. And that's why I've changed the motion. But thoroughly support the excellent work that the staff has done right up to now.
Okay, sorry, it was the right of reply.
Yeah, but also mentioned.
No, you don't get a right of reply in that instance. He was replying to your comment. That's what a right of reply is. So I'll now put the motion. I'm going to go straight to a division. I just think it's easier given the
Councillor Callagher.
Can we treat these separately, these three?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So do you want to do 1A separately or A and B separately?
All three.
No, I'm happy to do A.
Yeah, all separately, I think.
Okay, so then I'm going to be happy. A. Sorry, can I just do A as a, I won't do it by division. A, I. I just know I. Those against? Carried. Okay, A's passed. B, by division.
Okay, Councillor Callagher.
For.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yes.
Councillor McCall.
Yes.
Councillor Methven.
Yes.
Councillor Noon.
Aye.
Councillor Robertson.
For.
Councillor Scott.
No.
Councillor Weir. Councillor Somerville.
Yes.
And Councillor Wilson.
Yes,
That is passed.
thank you. C, I think C, I think I can do it by round the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those against? Thank you. A pass. Thank you. That takes us to the end of the meeting. Thank you, staff. That was short just for you. Oh, sorry, do you want to have a subsequent motion?
Well,
You did
that's
sort of.
Richard's question, but I'll ask Evan. With regards to the discussion around Lake Recife and any update on the site-led program, will we receive some detail around that through the LTP process? I don't really want to see us ask for a report if we're going to get some sort of, even if it's a one pager during the LTP, to give us an update of this on the site lead project on the site.
Thank you, Gavin.
I'm happy to provide just a general update in any form. Alternatively, there's probably another paper coming to your main committee round that would fit within, so we can incorporate it into there as well.
Okay, well, perhaps I'll move the motion then, and then that just keeps it on the table. So,
Okay.
yeah. So do we ask that staff provide an update on progress of the lead recycling site lead project? Is that okay?
That won't be any extra work for you as well.
Second.
It's just you seconded, moved, seconded. Any further discussion? If you don't want to speak to that motion any further, all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried, thank you. Thank you all very much for your attendance and participation today. I hope that was with healthy governance. Here, I'll just finish with the karakia. Here, tō te rangi Māori, ki runga I ngā iwi o